Corey here from Sellenwood Studio, and today I'm going to be walking you through a wonderful piano library by Soundiron. It's the old emotional piano. It's been out for a little while now, and it's a contact player library, which means you can play the library if you don't own the full version of Contact. And buying this library initially also gives you a cross-grade offer price for the full version of Contact. So it's a great library to start off with if you're new to Contact, or if you're just getting into making independent music and just working things out on your own. But this library is very unique. As a piano library, as we know, there are a lot of piano libraries on the market, and this being no exception, of course. It's a piano library. It's simple. It's got all your normal piano sounds. You've got the pedal up and down. You've got the keys, the sustains and everything. Just really simple, basic sort of instrument here. But what sets it apart from other piano libraries is the piano that was recorded. Now, this particular piano was a walnut piano, a Kawai Grand made of walnut, and it's very unique in the sense that it has a very, very lush low end. It does have a wounded kind of tone, especially when you get more towards the higher range of the keys. It gets a little more wounded, it gets a little more kind of rough around the edges, and it's obviously, it sounds very emotional. It's got an emotive tone, which owes obviously to the wonderful wood that the piano is made from. But like I said, the thing that sets it apart is the wonderful low end. This is a piano that you can play on its own. As if you're doing a piano or a classical track, you can play jazz with it because it's got a bit of brightness up in the higher register, but especially for layering bass notes under music, whether it be classical music, hybrid music, cinematic, ambient, pops, that sort of stuff. The low register on these keys are really thick, and they kind of cut through the mix, and they sit really well, and they provide a really great bass for a song. You basically don't even need a bass if you're using this piano. That's how rich it sounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a little bit of a listen to the bass register and a bit of listen to the high register, and then I'm going to walk you through the various controls that are available here. So let's start with listening to how the bass sounds. So as you can hear, really rich, beautiful, thick, bold bass tone that isn't too muddy, but it's got a lot of character, and it fills in a lot of that empty space when you're making a track and you kind of feel like there's something missing in the low end. You need a more encompassing kind of sub sound, and that's what the piano basically offers. That's what kind of makes it the emotional piano, because bass obviously is an important thing in emotional music. You need to feel the root note that it's playing in, while all the high notes are doing whatever they're doing. You need to have that strong bass tone to ground the listener, and this piano is really great for that. Now we'll hear the top end. The top end is a little bit more fragile, a little bit more woody, if that kind of makes sense, and it sounds like this. So as you can hear there, very nice woody tone. It's not too bright, it's not too punchy, but it cuts through the mix when it needs to. It's got a nice soft attack, which makes it easier to use a lot of different reverbs on it as well. It sounds great with reverb if you've got any kind of reverb or diffusion delay. Sounds really good. I'm using it with nothing at the moment, just bare bones, no compression, EQ, delay, nothing. This is how it sounds straight out of the box. So let's have a quick look at all of the controls that we've got here. It's kind of a simple instrument, but it offers you controls so that you can kind of tweak it the way you want to make it sound if you're a little more antsy about what you want, or if you want to experiment with it. So first of all, we'll have a look at the attack knob. And as we all know, the attack basically cuts off the beginning of the sample so that you get a nice fade in. And this is interesting if you want to sort of make the piano sound a bit more like harmonics from a guitar, like this. And we also have the dynamics knob here, and basically what this does is it just changes the way that the keyboard reacts to your playing in the way of dynamics. So if you pull the knob all the way down, it'll make it a bit easier to hit the harder notes and the softer notes if you're kind of a softer player. And if you pull it all the way up, and obviously for more harder players, there's a lot more dynamics there. The soft notes are really soft, and it's a bit harder to hit the hard notes. So it's a simple kind of thing to sort of change the way the instrument reacts to your playing style. And the decay knob here, basically, it's a subtle little control that when you hold the keys down with your fingers, you can hear the whole length of the note. But if you pull that right down, then it sort of cuts the end off, fades it out just a bit. So if you're having problems with the amount of voices that are building up, if you don't have a very good CPU, then that'll sort of help fade the keys out a bit more. And it's not very noticeable, so it's kind of a good thing to have if you've got sort of a lower grade computer and you kind of want to get a bit more conservative with the voices. The release volume, as usual, we have the release samples for the keys, which is basically the keys being lifted back up as the finger comes off the key. And you can change the volume of them so you can make them very prominent and make them stick out like this. Which, if you want to experiment, you can get some interesting sounds out of that. Or if you don't want the release samples at all and you kind of just want everything to be tight and smooth, then you can just turn them down. We've got the pedal volume as usual. Again, we've got the samples for the pedal, the up and down samples. So when you hit the pedal, you get the sound of the pedal being put down. And when you release the pedal, you get the sound of the pedal coming back up. And you basically turn this up if you want to hear that, or you can turn it down if you don't want to hear it. Pretty simple. The release, again, if you're going for a more experimental type of piano playing, if you want it to sound really nippy and sort of cut off, you can lower the release and it'll sound like this. Or if you bring that right up, and you'll be able to hear a little more of the note, basically as if you're holding the pedal down, which sort of allows you to play and not have to use the pedal, basically. And lastly, we got this high damping on or off switch. This basically acts kind of like a damper to the high notes. On a piano, all of the notes are damped except for the higher range. You'll get automatic sustain in a higher range when you're playing on a piano in real life, like this. And basically what the high damp button does, if you turn that on, it cuts off a bit of the ringing, kind of like the decay button, so that you don't have to have too much of that sustain if you don't want it. So as you can hear, it sort of fades out that tail. So it's useful if you kind of want a bit more orchestral kind of tapping on the high end without building up too much sustain, and again, without using too many voices. Other than that, we've got your simple convolution and tone effects section. You've got a host of convolutions in here. You've got your regular warehouse, church, cathedral, that sort of stuff. But you've also got a bunch of effects reverbs, which is kind of unique to the Soundiron series of libraries, because these tend to have very drastic and ambient effects on your playing. Everything's pretty simple. You've pretty much seen all this stuff before, turning reverb on and off, how much reverb you want, how big you want it to be, how much delay. You can put a custom reverb in there depending on on how you go about that. But the effects reverbs tend to have, like I said, a very drastic effect on the sound. So we'll turn one of them on and have a listen to what that does. So as you can hear, it's a pretty crazy effect. Soundiron have a lot of reverbs that are like that they put in their instruments, and obviously this piano, it fits well with that kind of thing. So you can really mesh and mold and mangle it and twist it and turn it and make it sound really interesting, which is good because this piano suits that kind of playing style. It's not too bright, it's not too punchy, so it melds well when you use effects like that. Other than that, the last thing we've got is just the tone and effects, which basically allows you to use the contact engine effects like EQ, flanger, or a stereo panner, stuff like that. Stuff to really get you sort of going if you don't have any effects of your own, or if you want to tweak things in the patch instead of adding effects to your instrument track. So that's the instrument itself. Like I said, simple, sounds great. It's good for tweaking. Obviously, you can make some really unique sounds with it just using a couple of different parameters. And the sound is the unique thing, that dark, rich tone, that emotive tone, obviously, which is why it's called the emotional piano. And it's got great bass, it's got a richness and a kind of flavour that you can't find in other places. And provided also are some unique ambient patches, some of them strange, some of them far left, some of them kind of interesting, kind of smooth, that you could use in cinematic music. And I'll just let you hear a few of them to give you an idea of what's in store. And all of these patches are basically made using the effects in the emotional piano patch. So there's no specialty equipment there. It's basically showing you the sort of things that you can do if you just tweak it a bit. So I'll let you hear a few of them. So, as you can hear, it's a great tool for the ambient industrial composer, but also a great tool for people who like classical music, pop, hybrid, cinematic, whatever really. The piano fits in a lot of different varieties and has a great tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a little track after I've finished talking here, so you can hear sort of the context, how the bass fits in with other instruments, and sort of give you an idea of how you can use the piano, use the high notes and the low notes, and how the tone sits well in a mix. So I hope this was informative for you and you know a bit more about the emotional piano, and I recommend that you pick it up because again, it's a very unique library. There are a lot of piano libraries out there. Even if you have plenty of them, I recommend you pick this one up because it's really warm, it's got a unique tone, it's a kind of piano that isn't really sampled that often, and it sounds great. So that being said, I'll see you later with another library, and I'll check you later.